Ryan Jarrell here for MMA News, and you can see my next guest back in action August the 24th at UFC Vegas 96 when he takes on Edmen Shahbazyan. And of course, it is GM3 Gerald Meerschaert back on the program. Gerald, how are you?
I'm great, Ryan. How you been?
I'm good. Nice to talk to you again. I love the setup with the frame jerseys. You can't see what I have behind me because the frame stuff is up top, but I think that's such a classy look.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. And then I can put, some of those memories somewhere and I just throw them in the closet so they're on the floor collecting dust.
Well, I'm sure you'll add more to the man cave wall as time goes by. I first want to start with your most recent fight in March. That was a round two RNC victory over Brian Barberena, man, and you looked really good in there. I feel like a lot of people expected you to go in there and do exactly what you did do. Any critiques or anything that maybe you would have changed looking back at it now?
I mean, not really. It went really well. Um, the only thing there was like one, I didn't get like knocked down like I got dropped, like he ran into me and I fell over and I just had my feet set right, but that was, a real minor thing. And I mean, there's always a way to look better, but I didn't get injured. I didn't take any unnecessary damage. I didn't make it hard for myself, so I'm happy with the performance.
Yeah, and another win. I had to look at your record to remind myself just how long you've been in the UFC now. It's crazy the amount of experience that you have and how many high level fighters you've been in there with. Does it even surprise you sometimes when you look back at everything you've done in your career?
I'm not doing too much looking back yet. So I'm sure once I'm done and I leave the gloves in the octagon, then they don't have time to really appreciate everything. But for right now, I'm just focused on the 24th.
Okay, fair enough. What has life been like for you since? Obviously, training at Kill Cliff, you got a bunch of monsters around you. Anything new in the life of GM3?
No, all good stuff, man. I love training at Kill Cliff. I love all the teammates there. I get a really good push. The coaches are great. I fit in really well. It's like it's big enough where there's like plenty of partners, but it's still small enough where everyone still talks to everybody and gets along, and like there's not weird little cliques. Like obviously the bigger guys hang out with the bigger guys a little bit more, but we still talk to the lighter weight classes, and everybody still trains together. So it's a real special place.
Any like Netflix movies or anything that you've really been binging lately? I'm trying to ask some fighters, about some of like the things that you guys are doing outside of just, the combat sports world. What, any new hobbies as far as that goes?
Not nothing new, because I got my fight next week, and anytime I'm doing cardio or just like weight maintenance or sweating a little bit, I finished the receiver series on Netflix. Now I'm watching the quarterback series, and I'm also a big fan of Hard Knocks, so I've been following that too.
Okay. I didn't realize, yeah, I guess you're a big football guy like that. Who's your team?
I, I wouldn't say I'm a big football guy, but I like there's so much. Of course, we're in America and the States, so like we have plenty of it, right? But if there's not a sport that's like covered better as far as like contact sports, like obviously I watched The Last Dance. I love that. I've watched some baseball ones. There was one with I forget his name, but his like dad owned a minor league baseball team for a while, and I watched that, and that was really cool. But football is like the biggest contact sport, so there's so much out there. Like I played pee wee football. I couldn't tell you more than the super basic stuff, and I don't know nearly as much as a lot of my Midwestern friends and family about football, but I do enjoy watching it, and I love seeing high level athletes. But by by birth, as consequence of my father, I'm a Cowboys fan. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. So I had some really good years growing up, and then it's just been like, hey, we're gonna make it to the playoffs and blow it. So I've gotten used to that.
Yeah. Well, they're going to be right there again this year. I mean, we'll see what happens with CD Lamb and Dak Prescott's always good. I think it just depends on what Jerry Jones wants to do with where he's going to allocate the money, who's going to keep around. You mentioned the receiver series. I'm glad you said that because I absolutely love it. And I'm a NFL junkie. I love football. I'm a Patriots fan, diehard. I'm from the area, but when I'm not watching the Patriots, I cheer for the Lions. So I really enjoyed seeing Amon-Ra St. Brown in that series. Was there one of the receivers that maybe you related to the most or that stuck out that you're like, okay, I'm a fan of this guy now?
Honestly, I like all of them, man. So when I did an interview with James Lynch, I just picked one off the fly. I picked George Kittle. I thought he had a great personality. But I honestly am not just because I lived in Wisconsin, but Devonte Adams, like his demeanor, like he's been around a little bit, but he's also still like he's a super tough competitor, but he's kind of I don't know if soft spoken is the right word, but he's not necessarily as amped up all the time. But then when he does get amped up, like you see it. So like I connected with that for sure.
Okay. All great choices, no matter which way you go. Bilal Muhammad, someone you know pretty well, claimed the 170 belt, beating Leon Edwards. Can you just tell me your thoughts on that? I just interviewed Brendan Allen, and he thought the fight went exactly, how it was going to go in his mind. What did you think of that fight going in?
I that's pretty much how I picture the fight going. Leon's always dangerous, so my whole thing was like I was pretty confident that's what Bilal was going to do. It was just whether or not he gets called with a shot, which is like that can happen to anybody, right? Especially when you got a guy in your opponent that's a sharpshooter. So, I mean, I was fairly confident going in, and once he got out there, like he looked so good with his hands, because he used so much of his hands. His shot selection was great. Anytime he got in on the legs, it was almost an uncontested takedown. Um, the only critique I could possibly have is he gave up the body triangle at one point, but when you're all over a dude like that, that sometimes that's going to happen. And he went and got it right back the next round. So, he still made the adjustment and came out on top. And, I thought maybe you give Leon the body triangle round, but other than that, it was all blow all night.
Do you think he's going to hang on to this belt for a while? I mean, there's a lot of killers at the top of the 170 division, but Bilal, the champion, do you think that belt stays with him for, a few fights at least?
Oh, yeah. I think he can go on a pretty good run. I don't think people understand like the level of dedication and like the pace Bilal can put on people. Like he's a lot better than guys give him credit for, and because he doesn't have like a slick submission or necessarily have knockout power, it's like he can still hurt you, he can still submit you. But if he doesn't, unlike a lot of people, he is not going to stop being in your face. And most guys cannot handle that at a certain point. Like it's just, especially in a 5 round fight, like you better hope that you just happen to catch him with something to just get a break. You know what I mean? Like, and he's got a good team around him, and more so than a lot of guys that I've known. And I've known, a lot of high level fighters, a lot of champions. He is very committed to the extra work that allows him to fight at that pace at all times. Like I don't think Bilal ever really has an off season. Even right now, I'm sure he's like running stairs and doing marathons and all kinds of weird stuff that I wouldn't necessarily prescribe to, but for him, it's perfect.
What do you think it is about him that maybe like the mainstream MMA fans, don't gravitate towards? Because he seems like a really nice guy. I feel like he should get more love than he does.
I think he's actually getting a lot of love. It's just that there's also so many haters that like it balances itself out. I mean, like look in London when he fought Leon, like he had a whole community come out for him. And even when Dana was talking about the video with him getting the belt wrapped around his waist that did ridiculous numbers. Like he's got a lot of fans around the world. It's just not all of them are necessarily in the U.S. And you know, he is Palestinian, he's Middle Eastern and Muslim, but a lot of people that are U.S. fans like, oh, he grew up in Chicago, so they only put him in that one bucket. But he's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So like, still got fans in the U.S., but then he's also got this whole other part of the world that like I'm from the U.S. and I'm like just a plain white dude. Like that, I got nothing. I got no special thing going on, so I'm not getting any extra fan base. But for him, he's got like a whole extra legion of fans, and like people are starting to see that now.
Can you tell me a story that maybe like the general public doesn't know, just something that kind of speaks to the person that Bilal Muhammad is?
But Bilal is seriously one of like the best people and representatives of the sport himself, his family, his faith that I've ever seen. I don't I think maybe he swore once and I wasn't even there for it. Like he legitimately does not swear. Like when he says oh fudge and stuff, he actually doesn't swear. You know what I mean? Like I've seen him get kicked in the nuts in the middle of training, and he still won't swear. It's ridiculous.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good. So, do you feel like I mean, the fighters, you guys that are around him know that kind of stuff, but do you think that this is something that maybe might help garner him more fans moving forward and people realize, okay, this guy, he walks it like he talks it. This is who he is in person. It's not fake.
Yeah, no, I think people are starting to see that more. You know, he's got his podcast that's doing really well, and obviously winning the belt's only going to help that. And I think as the UFC starts to put out more content on him as well, and people get to see him, like, you know, it, he's actually been really great on Twitter and funny lately. But like, he is kind of like that corny, funny guy, and like, it is funny because like it's him. It's genuinely him. He's not trying to be a tough guy. He's not trying to do anything. He is really funny, and you get to know him like he's just a genuine person. There's so many people that, even if they're, I wouldn't say a lot of fighters put on a facade, but they find something that people recognize them for, and they double down on that like crazy. He's just gonna do him no matter what. Like, he's sponsored by Young LA, and he'll love that I'm saying this. He still continues, I'm sure, to not wear matching socks on a daily basis, and I don't understand it. He's got all this money. He's got a belt. He's literally has an apparel deal. Young LA, if you guys make socks, send him like 20 pairs because he refuses to wear the same sock on either foot. He's gonna have like a white sock on one foot and a purple sock on the other. One's Nike, one's Under Armour. It makes no sense. I don't understand it.
Well, that's Bilal, right? That's what he does.
That's him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would make sense for young LA to create some sort of like custom like sock gear for Bilal. Maybe who knows? Maybe they'll catch wind of this and they'll start doing that. I also wanted to ask you about Brendan Allen. Big fight with Nasruddin Imavov right around the corner. It's the end of September. What does Brendan have to do to secure this win? Really tough fight. We know how much power Imavov has, but Brendan just keeps climbing the rankings. Does he get it done? And what's the easiest path to victory here?
I think he just keeps doing what he's been doing. You know what I mean? Focus on the process, focus on tightening everything up in training, and like, Brendan, he is a lot physically bigger than people realize, I think. And especially when you step in there with him, like if you don't know him, you haven't been in there with him, like he doesn't, look super shredded or anything, but he's a big, strong kid and he can crack. Like we've seen it in plenty of fights where like, not unlike myself, he's going to hurt people before he submits them. And I would argue that he's even got a little more pop behind his shots because he is a little bit bigger. I mean, we saw that with Paul Craig. We saw that with Bruno Silva. Like he's going out there and he's throwing some heat. You know what I mean? And Imavov, he's a very open stance, very good movement. His defense is great, but when you hold your hands low, if someone can get close enough, especially if they're a little bit bigger and longer than you are, you leave the opportunity to get hit once in a while. And I think because I don't know what it is, maybe they don't see something flashy, or maybe Brendan doesn't get the flowers he deserves. I think people underestimate his abilities a lot of time. And again, if he doesn't hurt you with the hands, his wrestling is pretty good too. You know what I mean? And if you try to step the takedown, he's going to crack you. And if he gets you on the ground, he is really good at pinning you to the mat, using his weight correctly, hitting you, and then looking for that neck. So I think if he just keeps doing what he's been doing, stays training, and he's ready and he's sharp, he's going to be a handful for anybody.
I wholeheartedly agree with him too that this fight should be 5 rounds. I don't understand it. And so from Amavov's perspective, what do you think their mindset is as to why they want this fight to be 3 versus 5?
Uh, I guess the if I had to pick a reason tactically, I would say that he doesn't want to deal with Brendan for 5 rounds because he saw him in a 5 round fight go the whole five and push the pace into the deep rounds, and it's very hard to do that, against someone that's as big or bigger than you are, especially if like he thinks Brendan's going to wrestle him and he wants to move around and strike. So if he wants to be a little bit flashier and maybe thinks he's going to peck at the outside and try to like just score a big hit here or there, get a ooh or a ah, and then run away a little bit, that would probably be better for a 3 round fight. And if it's not that, I would guess it's a money thing, and he would either, why in his mind, if I had to make a guess, why am I going to fight 5 rounds if I'm not a main event? Which I don't know. You know what I mean? Your top five. I don't know what the difference is, especially as you're getting. It's a big card. You're getting plenty of exposure. And you know what? If you're really confident in yourself, shouldn't take 5 rounds anyway. And I don't know that Brendan doesn't finish him inside of 3 in the first place. So we'll see if that ends up mattering. But you know, that's what I would think anyway.
I don't know if it's even possible at this point, but I sure hope that gets changed. I hope the UFC comes to them and is like, hey, this really needs to be a 5 round fight. Let's change it. Make everyone happy, maybe except for Imavov's team. We'll see what transpires there. I also
Yeah.
wanted to just get your thoughts on how you scored the Chris Curtis fight. I definitely thought Brendan won, but I thought it was a little bit closer than he thought it was. Did you, was it 3 rounds to two? Like how close did you feel that was going into the fifth round?
Oh man, I it's been a while since I was like focused on that fight. I do remember it being close, and I do remember thinking it was closer than I was comfortable with. Not that they were both fighting their ass off, but it's still not entirely clear exactly what the judging criteria is going to be for any given judge because I've seen certain judges they lean more towards they kind of ignore the wrestling if not a lot happens and they're going off purely who lands more significant strikes. And then I've seen judges favor a little more wrestling control time. It's just how do you argue it? You know what I mean? It's supposed to be damage and effectiveness, but then it's your interpretation of damage and effectiveness. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure if you looked at each individual judge, you probably find some consistency in their decision making, but it's not a universal consistency. And just with that, and like maybe it's us and not them. I don't know what it is, but there's been plenty of decisions I've seen where if they're close enough, they go a way you didn't think they were going to go, and it's like. I remember thinking it was very, very close. Like I would, I was like, I'm leaning towards Brendan, and I think he got it, but it was close enough where I was concerned.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I felt too. I'm sure I've asked you this before, Gerald. So forgive me if I have, but we're talking about judging. So, let me go down this rabbit hole again. When you look at judging in the sport right now, what do you think needs to be done to fix it? Is it open scoring? Is it having you fighters that competed at the highest level? When you retire, you guys are the judges and making sure that there's no bias. Like you're not judging a Brendan Allen fight. Like what needs to be done to really fix these problems moving forward?
I It doesn't matter how tight you get the rule set or whatever happens. There's always going to be flaws with human judging and refereeing, and it just is what it is. It's just how do we make that as little of a factor as possible, and you know, outside of you can only make the rules so concise before it's like because if you're gonna go like say wrestling has a point system. Would you score points for each hit or something? But then you have to have a hit count. So I don't see a problem with open scoring. I don't know why it would be negative for people to know what's going on. You know what I mean? And there's 3 judges. You don't have to say who scored what with whatever. You know what I mean? So then like yeah, they're in the arena because that's the only logical complaint I've heard is like, well, if a judge puts up a score that the people don't like, they could throw stuff at them or it could get ugly or something. I don't really buy that, but again, you can make it anonymous. They don't need to know. Just let the fighter know. It's one of the few sports, it's one of the few combat sports where you don't know if you're behind or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, at least then, and the other argument is like, well, if you're up 2 going into the third, then you're going to take your foot off the gas. First of all, I don't think that's possible. Second of all, if you got a guy that consistently does that, he's probably going to get cut. And third, even if I'm up 2 rounds, guess what? The other guy knows it too. He's going to try and take my head off and just go for broke. So there's no way that that's not going to be exciting. You know what I mean? And if I'm up 2 anyway and beating the guy up, why am I not going for the 50K? That's just at least where my head's at. So I cannot fathom a logical reason that we can't have open scoring. And like, I don't think it's going to be dangerous for the judges. You can keep it anonymous. No one's going to fight any less harder. Like all of those arguments sound like nonsensical to me, unless someone can provide me with some real insight because we have all these other major sports and combat sports with open scoring, and it's just fine. And guess what? People are still going to get upset, and that's cool. But at least I have a chance to influence the outcome. You know what I mean? Instead of not knowing, or like I'm trying to fight and finish the fight no matter what anyway, right? But at least now I can be like, okay, for sure I know I'm down. Or for sure I know I need to win this round. You know what I mean? And the third round, you're not going to know until it's over. So if it's close, it is what it is. But at least let me know the first two what's going on.
Yeah, all great points. Hopefully something changes in the future because it just seems to keep being a problem. At some fight, every card, every event for every promotion. So hopefully something does change in the future. I want to transition to, camp right now and, who have been the partners that maybe you've had to kind of mimic Shabazian? Anyone specific that you've been going with more than the others?
Not really. Just the same crew of the usual suspects. So I mean, we've got a lot of good right-handed guys. We got a lot of good strikers. Um, there's definitely a style that he has that's his own, but that doesn't mean that he might not try to shoot or might not try to mix up stuff a little bit. I'm not ruling out anything. I try to focus more on what I'm doing and what I want to do. So then, like, if I get in there and like, maybe he wants to wrestle, well, it doesn't matter because I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do anyway. Or he, all of a sudden switches lefty, it doesn't matter. I'm not like, oh gosh, that throws out my whole game plan. So my game plan is not predicated entirely on exactly what I think he's going to do. Like I watch for tendencies and I try to analyze and everything like that. But, that's in the back of my mind, but I know what I want to do and how I want to execute it. And if he changes up stuff, great. He's just still going to have to stop me.
When you watch tape on your opponents, do you learn more from the losses that they've had or the wins?
Um, I the wins and losses thing, like that's not going to tell you much. It's really more how long the fight went and like whether or not they had to go through adversity. Like if a guy goes out there and he just cracks somebody and wins, like that doesn't tell you anything. It tells you that like maybe the only thing you can draw from that is like maybe he's got really good power or he had a really good setup or his other guy just was having an off day. But if you're being charitable, you're like, okay, he can crack and this was a good setup he had. But there's not much you're gonna get out of that. Losses, you could see a weakness possibly, but then you keep in mind if you see something exploited over and over the years, it's like, all right, maybe he worked on that, but that seems to be a weakness. And if there's something else that a guy did that like you kind of do well, you can kind of look for that. But I think if you watch fights where guys have to be the nail for a little bit, you can get a sense of like, what kind of fighter they are, what do they do when the pressure's on, and that'll tell you a lot more about them than anything, whether or not they win or lose.
Yeah, makes sense. As I mentioned earlier too, just about your experience, you're probably going to have more overall fights as a pro than a lot of the guys that you're fighting, right? But when you look at him, where he's at in his career, do you feel like experience is going to play a big factor in this fight?
I don't know. I get this question so much, and like every time, it's like at this point, like if experience was the only thing that mattered, I would be undefeated three division world champion by now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, does it help? Absolutely, it helps. But we talk about experience. I don't know what experience he has. Like, he's been, for experience sake, he's been in the UFC or like, wasn't he on Dana White's when he was 20 years old or something like that? Like, he's been in the UFC probably almost just as long as I have. He was in at a much younger age than I was. You know what I mean? So, experience wise, most of his fights have been in the UFC. I've had a lot more fights, you know what I mean? But um, it's something that like it'll help me for sure. I don't think it's gonna hurt him at all, other than like, you've seen enough of my fights. Unless something's really wrong or unless I get caught and I just go to sleep, it's not like he's gonna hit me once I'm gonna go away. But other than that, yeah, I don't know. The experience thing matters that much. It's can you learn from your experience to be a better fighter? Because again, if all it was like, oh, the more matches you have, the better you are, I'd be a three division world champ. So obviously that's not the case.
We know, what you specialize in, what you're best at, or I guess what you're known for, right on the ground. But you said to me in our last interview that you can bang too, like you can get in there and mix it up. Is this a fight where you feel like maybe the public's going to see, the best version of you on the feet?
Yeah, I mean, hope so. Hopefully, it's the best version of me everywhere. You know what I mean? I've trained for that. I've prepared for that. obviously, like if I see a way to get him down easily and get him to the floor, I know I'll have a big advantage there. But every one of my, even the fight against Barberena, I still was on the feet a little bit. I was still throwing some jabs out there and sticking them a little. So it's not like I ever just shoot. You know what I mean? It's just people tend to just remember the tail half of the fight, or even if I get hit at all, they kind of like negate the whole thing. Like for a real throwback, when I fought Muradov, I mean he was cracking me, but I was catching him too. I also kicked him in the head, landed some leg kicks, and I rocked him on the feet. Like yeah, he rocked me before that, but like I was given just as good as I was getting on the feet before I took him down and finished the fight. So the whole how's the stand up going to look? Like, is it going to look pretty in the way people think it's supposed to look? Like, I'm not the fast twitch guy. It's not going to be like super smoking fast, like 1-2 fastballs, but I'm going to get in there and I'm going to hit him in the face really hard. He's probably not going to like it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this fight. And when you look at his, stand-up skill set, is there one combo that you have to watch out for the most? Is there something that he's best at?
No, he's pretty solid all around. Like, he's got some good stuff. Manages distance well. He'll fight on the inside. He'll fight on the outside. Like, and I'm not like downplaying or diminishing his skills. Like I'm saying, he's solid everywhere. There's not one thing that jumps out that like that's his thing. But that just makes him more dangerous because that means I need to be on alert at all times because he could be in the clinch and rip a knee and throw an elbow. He could be on the outside and throw a fast 1-2. He as I circle or something, he could lean back and throw that switch kick or so, throw a kick up top, kind of like he caught Tavares with. So he's got plenty of tools and he knows how to use them. So I'm going to be, on alert at all times.
Do you have a prediction here, like an official prediction, how it ends, or are you just going to kind of go in there, flow, and see what happens?
Yeah, probably second or third round finish. If I had to take a guess, it's
That's
usually how my
usually what.
fights go. So
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Back at the Apex too, like is it comfortable there? Do you like it there? I mean, some fighters I feel like, they obviously want to be in front of the big screaming fans, but would have to imagine anyways that there must be something, comfortable about being at the Apex where you can hear your coaches and maybe it's a little bit more intimate. Is that the case for you?
I mean, I don't know if it's any better or worse. It's just different. And like I've said a lot of times, it's way cooler to have a crowd, but it's very convenient to have everything right there. You got the PI right there. The Apex is right there. The weigh-ins are so much easier. There's no like the ceremonial weigh-ins are right after, so you got the whole day. Um, you're in, you're out, and you don't gotta like be caught up in traffic in like a huge metropolitan area, which is also nice. That could, I know I only have to be there for a certain amount of time, and I don't gotta sit around for like 3 or 4 hours, which is cool. And again, it's a way like I know some of these Apex cards get grief on the internet, and it's like every single time I see one, if people don't see like one or two quote unquote like high profile fights immediately, like it's going to be a bad card. Like I know I saw the last one got a lot of grief about it, but it's like even the last one had a bunch of finishes, and even other than that, I've seen plenty of times where they're like, this isn't going to be good, and then everyone's like, oh man, they're really throwing down. You know what I mean? So like it's the same thing. It doesn't matter where it's at, first of all, and second of all, if you love the sport, if there's a way that they can put on more fights and get guys more opportunities, I think that's a net win for everybody. The fans and the viewers get more content, they get more fights, athletes get a chance to make money and fight more often. So I know they're going to be shutting it down and probably doing some more road shows, and we'll see what happens if they expand it or what's going on. But I think if there's a way for the UFC to put on more shows, make more money, and give guys more opportunities, I don't see why that's a bad thing.
Definitely agree with that. Have you decided on a walkout song yet?
Not yet. I've been so focused on training, I haven't thought about it yet. So we'll see what happens.
All right, still a little time to make that decision. What about post fight? Like when you want to go eat somewhere, is there somewhere near the Apex you're like, okay, that's my go-to. That's where I want to go.
I don't. You'd think all the times I've been in Vegas I'd have one, but I really don't. In and out, obviously we don't have that on the East Coast, so like that's a good place to hit up. Um, there's a lot of places on the strip that are really good. Last time we were staying at the Hard Rock, I went to a Thai restaurant that was awesome. So it's a lot more like what I'm feeling at the moment, but for sure, whatever it is not probably not going to be healthy. Is the key thing. There's going to be a lot of salt, a lot of fat, and a lot of sugar at some point. So
Well, at that point, you've earned it. There's no doubt about that, my man.
yeah,
Excited to see you back in there again, August 24th, UFC Vegas 96. Before we do get out of here today, Gerald, I want to get some fight picks. I want to talk about the card this weekend, UFC 305, Dricus and Izzy for the title. Where are you leaning there? Do you feel like Dricus is going to retain, or do you think Izzy gets it back?
the closer we get, honestly, the more I think Dricus is going to keep it, just because every time you think like someone has a style that's going to give him problems, it doesn't. And Izzy's, Izzy, if he's down the middle and keeps distance well, there is a chance he can peck him apart, keep him at range, and then catch him with something eventually. But generally speaking, the more I see his highlights in his fights, he depends on his movement and his length to throw circular shots, which is fine. But Dricus is just, a human tank and just goes down the middle. You know what I mean? So that's how Strickland got inside on Izzy and cracked him with that right hand. And just because Dricus doesn't like look the prettiest when he does it, I think that's another where people are like, oh, if he's not that good or whatever. It's like he legitimately kickboxed. And like just because it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to you, it doesn't matter. If it works, it freaking works. You know what I mean? So if he just bull rushes and goes forward and throws hands, if he gets a takedown, he gets a takedown. He's that physically big of a guy. That's going to prevent or present some issues for Izzy, and I think that's going to be the story of the fight. And I'm leaning a little more towards Dricus, but it's like, can Dricus kind of run him over and stay up in his face, or can Izzy establish that range and kind of play the matador and look for the big shots here and there?
I keep going back and forth. I still don't know. I don't know where I'm leaning. Robert Whitaker and Hamzat Chimaev was rebooked for the end of October. If that fight happens, if it does come to fruition, give me your analysis on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if they're healthy, that'll be a fun fight to see if Hamzat can make it, and hopefully he figures out whatever he's got going on because this is not a recent issue. It's been a few fights that he's had to reschedule and miss. Um, I think Robert presents a lot of problems though. He's an actual 85er. He's, you know, stout, strong guy. He's very mobile, right? So shooting from a long distance is not going to work like it has in other people. He can wrestle, and he's got power and he punches from odd angles. And Hamzat, obviously, if there's anyone who can't dismiss his power, it's this guy. But for sure, Rob's got just as much power, and he comes from goofy angles. And Hamzat does kind of stand with his, kind of like not to knock it, but like the more basic guard. And you got to be kind of ready for a dude that moves in a completely different way. And I don't know that there's a lot of people that can imitate that. You know what I mean? And especially Hamzat, like for better or worse, does seem to gas as the fight goes on. Robert Whitaker is not going to gas. Is it a 5 or a 3 round?
Oh, I'd have to imagine it'd be a 5 round fight. I'd have to double check on that. I think it's the co-main, and I think it's 5 rounds.
Okay, yeah, because if it's 5, I'm definitely going with Whitaker. But even if it's 3, it's like, Hamzat's going to come out and really try to go for it that first round. Um, but even going back to like the Gilbert fight and the Kamaru fight, like those are 70 pounders, and you had trouble like holding them down, and now you got a guy that's a 85er who's been in there with big 85ers, who's a little more bulky and like just as athletic. You're not gonna hold him down. So unless you catch that dude, like it's gonna be a very long night for him.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for that fight. If you were the UFC matchmaker, depending on what happens, obviously with Izzy and Dricus, obviously Brendan Allen and Nasruddin Imavov at the end of next month, how would things shake out? Like Sean Strickland sitting idle, he doesn't have a matchup yet. How would you match things at the top of the division if you were the UFC matchmaker?
If who won?
Well, let's just say Brendan beats Imavov.
Uh,
Obviously, regardless of whoever wins, Izzy or Dricus, who would
oh,
get the
okay.
next title shot? How would you match the top
I see.
guys?
Yeah, you're saying if Brendan wins, whatever happens with the so I mean, I think if you beat number four, you got a pretty good case. And I know, well, what's Cannonier rank too? Because I know he's fighting
Yeah,
Carrillo or whatever
he's the main event of your
of my
card.
card. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah, he's
how high is
seven,
seven?
seven.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like, I don't even remember who's number three. Is Strickland number three?
I'm just gonna pull it
Or
up.
is it? Yeah. Because is Dricus is a champ, then Izzy or Strickland. I don't know who number three is. You would
Yeah,
think I should know this stuff.
I got it right here. Let's see. All right, so Drickus champ, Strickland one, Izzy two, Whitaker three, Amava four. Oh, Cannonier's five. Vittori six, Brendan seven.
So if you want to mix it up, I feel like Brandon's done more than enough to earn a title shot, especially if he finishes a mob off. Like he's taken short notice fights, he's bumped up to main events, he's beat guys that he's not supposed to beat. That would get some new blood in there for sure. And then you can have the winner of Whitaker and Hamzat fight the guy that lost for the belt, and then Carrillo can fight somebody up, like wait for one of the winners of that and fight up as well, and that would get things like mixed up a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because you'll have two guys coming up that are new, and then two guys that are still kind of at the top of the loss fighting someone newer as well, and kind of mix it in there. Because I feel like the middleweight top, even like the top 10 has been kind of like the same guys for a little bit,
Yeah,
which
Costa's eight, Hermansson's nine, Delidze's 10, and Chimaev's 11.
which that doesn't make any sense. And I'm not hating on Hamzat, like it's just that you didn't beat any ranked middleweights, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, I
So
think it's just the
yeah,
star power.
yeah, which hey, that goes a long way too, man. And he's looked good in a lot of his fights, so it's like you can't argue with that. But yeah, I would say Brendan gets the finish, give him the title shot, and then kind of play mix and match with the guys and like get them fights against guys they haven't got with, and then you kind of stir things up a little bit. You get a lot more fun storylines that way, and guys give guys a chance to move up. And then, if the guys that have been there win, then that's cool. They establish themselves. But, you're at least keeping fresh people in the mix and like trying to get new faces in there. Because at a certain point, like Izzy won the belt and defended it a bunch of times and fought everybody. Robert won the belt, defended a bunch of times, fought just about everybody. And they fought each other a bunch of times. You know what I mean? Costa's somehow still in the top whatever after not winning for a long time, except for like Luke Rockhold. And yeah, it's like at a certain point they got to fight somebody that they haven't fought or that hasn't been in the mix for a while. So I think that would be a good way to start things off.
I like it. I think Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby should take some advice from you here moving forward, Gerald. Uh,
Yeah.
last thing for me before we get out of here today, assuming that John Jones beats Stipe Miocic, John Jones fights Tom Aspinall to unify the title. How does that fight end? Who you picking?
Right now, I would go with Aspinall just because he's just so big, and I feel like he's just as athletic, and he's young. And that's not to downplay anything that John Jones has done or is capable of, because obviously he's like pretty much the MMA GOAT at this point, right? Um, but I think Aspinall is just, I haven't seen him look bad. Like he hurt his knee once, it was a freak accident, and even before that, he was looking fine. And he's just super fast. I'm sure there are holes that John Jones sees in his game that he's going to try to exploit, but when you got someone who's like bigger than you and younger and probably faster at this point, and just naturally used to being that big. And like I didn't know this till, but I found out a while ago, like he actually started out specializing more in like jujitsu. Like that's probably the guy I'm going with.
He's scary.
Yeah.
He's very scary. Well, hopefully that fight does come to fruition and Jones doesn't retire after the Stipe fight. Hopefully that fight actually happens. I'd like to see him in there a couple more times before he walks off into the sunset. Gerald, always appreciate your time, my man. Can't wait to see you back in there again, August 24th, UFC Vegas 96. Before we do sign off, I want to give you the floor. Anything you want to plug, anyone you want to thank? The floor is yours.
Yeah. Shout out to my sponsors, my teammates, Combat Corner is awesome. Everybody at Kill Cliff. Love you guys.